Today's module we're bringing you is the street to seat experience. And one of the things that we've learned is that when people think about going to church for the first time, it actually starts at their house. The very first thing that they do, they go to their computer, they might type in church near me, or they have some felt need, and they find a church, maybe it's your church, and that really is the beginning of the experience. But next what happens is they start driving to church. There's some things that we've learned that you can do literally out on the street, that you can get things ready in the parking lot. Today we're talking about the street to seat experience. And John, you just have a great point about this.
Yeah, well, first of all, this is a dialogue today, and with us is Jeremy Drew. Jeremy is one of the leaders at one of our campuses and is probably one of the best, I think, in our whole Bayside system at creating an environment from the time they get into the parking lot to they get into the building and even after the services. So welcome today, Jeremy.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
And we work together, the three of us at a campus. That campus grew significantly in the 3 years we partnered together. So we're going to share with you some of that. But I also want to address this, and I'm going to talk about this every time we have one of these, because I've been getting some of the feedback about saying, well, Bayside's a big church. Is this really scalable? And so, yes, Bayside is a big church. Our campuses, we have campuses that run 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 people. But I want to let you know, we also have 7 campuses. We have a campus that has, up to recently, has been running 100 people. And the campus I'm involved in now, 1 year ago, had 0 people. We just started it, and now we're up. We had 300 last weekend, and we're moving forward. But we run the same play at every campus. So everything we're going to talk about is scalable to your campus. You just have to use some imagination. You have to really think through, talk about it as a team. But there's everything we talk about you can do in a campus of 50, 100, 200, 300. In fact, you can use all these principles in a home church setting. Because it really is across the board. So.
And I really like the idea about the home church, because if you were driving by somebody's home that was a church, you'd have no idea that it was a church. And one of the problems that we've seen in so many churches is that people don't know that they're open for business.
That's right.
And they'll just drive by it. Like a house, you wouldn't know it was a church, so you drive by it knowing that they were open for business. Right. And so we've learned there's some things that you can do on your campus that literally just show activity on the outside of the building. As you see here in the picture, it could be a pop-up tent with some balloons, people in the parking lot, but we want activity.
Let me add this too. Here's the other thing too, is parking. Have your people park in the front of the church. A lot of churches have the kind of the back door experience. Get all the cars out front. As many cars as you front. In fact, close the back parking lots if you have them. Yeah. So they're all parking up front. It's like going to a restaurant. If you go to a restaurant and no one's out front, you're like, what is wrong with this restaurant?
Yeah, it must not be very good.
That's right. And one of the first things that's so important for a guest impression is signage. When people walk onto the campus for the first time, do they know where to go? Do they know where to park? And for those with kids, it's so important that they know where Children's Ministries is located. So many businesses are good at this. Malls, IKEA, Walmart, Target. Walk through those places and just see the signage that they have for first-time guests. What are the things that they do to really help somebody feel comfortable that's never been there for the first time?
And one of the things that I've seen you do that I just love is I'll drive up to the campus and you'll put those signs where like each sign has one word on it.
Right.
But when you read them all, it makes a sentence.
That's right.
And we have those up sometimes. Sometimes you put them up for a week in advance.
Yep.
And it just shows that, hey, this coming weekend, something's going on here, and you start to get the people, maybe there's 4,000 people that drive by in a week, and you start getting them ready to think about coming to church.
Another kind of a technical part of signage is it has to be big enough, readable, and high enough.
Yes.
It's never high enough in most of the things. So like say this is a sign and someone's standing in front of it, you can't read it. We had a rule where we have a guy at our church, his name's Scott Shaw, and Scott's like what, 6'7". Like we always had the sign had to be readable if Scott Shaw was standing in front of it. That was one of the rules. We also wanted it to be straight and mounted in a way that looked nice. And I don't know if there's any other technical things you guys want to add.
They don't have to be expensive, right?
No, don't have to be expensive. They just need to be practical. Try to walk through your campus with the visitors' eyesight in mind. Most of them are looking for restrooms, where the church is located. Many churches you walk in, you don't know where the main auditorium or sanctuary is even located, let alone where kids ministry is located. So go through your campus through the eye of a visitor. Ask some of your first-time guests, what are the challenges that they encounter the first time that they came when they walked on your campus, and provide signage that is clear, concise and helpful.
Yeah, really good stuff. You know, the way that I got involved at Bayside the very first time that I came to the church. A friend of mine invited me, and that day, our senior pastor said, hey, we really need somebody to help us in the parking lot. We have these things called road warriors, and you just need to help direct traffic in. And I raised my hand and said, I'll volunteer there. That was literally how I started at Bayside. Awesome. And there was a team of 5 of us, and literally we got together right before the church was open, and we positioned ourselves in the parking lot, and we just had one goal in mind. That was to wave at people, to be happy, and to help them find a parking place. And then even more importantly, when they got out of their car, to be the first greeter.
Yeah.
And we were the first ones that every single person that we could see, if they could make eye contact with us, we would say, hey, how you doing? It's so glad that you're here. And if you haven't been here before, just go right over there. Even though there were signs in the parking lot, we would go out of our way to be that first handshake.
Right. Andy Stanley has kind of famously said, you know, the sermon starts in the parking lot, that it really starts with those road warriors giving a positive first impression. Most guests make a decision if they're going to return to a church within the first 7 minutes of their time on our campus. And that's in most campuses long before they've even gotten inside, before the sermon or the music has started. It's really those first 7 minutes from, you know, the street to the seat, walking in. Who do they see? Who do they encounter? And do they feel welcomed?
And if you can play music in your parking lot, that is really helpful, because there's sets a little bit of environment. We have hung signs before on our light poles, and those, you know, help build that experience a little bit. There's a lot of different ways to do that in the parking lot, but you want to make sure. This is the thing that we've run into several times at Bayside. When we've recruited people for the parking lot team, they thought their main job was traffic control, and that's not it.
Yeah.
I almost say, let them run into each other in the parking lot. Your main job is to be the front door greeting face of the ministry.
Yes.
And unfortunately, a lot of times you attract the traffic cops.
Yes.
And we've had people blowing whistles, we've had people yell at people, almost get into fights that were on our road warrior team. And so we've had to really say, your job is not really traffic first. Your first job is greeting, setting the tone, and doing that.
Yeah, and back to the signage. When I was working on the Road Warrior team, we would often, on the night before, just get a can of spray paint and just spray paint on cardboard. Yeah. And that was our sign. So, I mean, it literally doesn't have to be an expensive printed sign. You can literally make anything work.
Right.
All right, so this leads us to our next area, which is guest services, and it's a really crucial part of the church. We often have a table like this at our services. So back in the early days, Judd, you actually started this, and what did you call your table?
Yeah, it was called Fairly New to Bayside, and you know that worked really well because we didn't want to single people out as being the first time guest. And if you said fairly new to Bayside, then it really matched so many different people, and they felt more comfortable coming up to the table.
I think the other thing too is a lot of people come into a church and they don't want to be identified in the first few weeks. Like they're going, I may never come back here again. I don't want to go up and meet anyone. So you kind of give them the freedom to not identify maybe on the first week. So Fairly New makes a good name for that. So we've done many different iterations of this, but what I would say had been really kind of the key throughout. You want to have a central place or person that can answer the basic questions as people arrive. Now, if it's a really small church, you may not have a table, you may just have a name tag that says, new or have questions, ask me. And that person out front and central. And if it's a smaller church, they're going to know the regulars and they're going to say hi. And you're going to try to educate them not to spend time talking to the regulars, but to be really looking out for the new people. They go up, greet them, and take care of them. But a lot of churches do a table. We've done the table. The table's been very successful. And what we'll do is we'll ask people to go to the table. And we have the way we do it in the service is a lot of people, there's fewer people go to in the beginning of the service because they're usually running in just on time. So they don't have time at the table. Go into the service. We get up at the offering. We say, hey, welcome to Bayside. We're glad you're here. Inside your program is a Connect card. We'd love you to fill this out so we can get to know you. They fill it out. We say, now you can do two things. You can drop it in the offering basket, or Best thing is to take it out to the guest service table out in the lobby, and we got a free gift for you. And talk about the gifts. Like, the gifts have been really big.
Yeah, so one of the ways that we found to motivate people to go to the table, the guest services, or we called it the guest lounge during a time, is to come up with a fun, enticing gift that really gets people to go there. So
And that they want.
And that they want. So for a while, we had a new car wash station that was opening right next door to the church, and we got a ton of free gift cards from them. And for several months, we gave out free tickets to get a free car wash, and those were so popular. It was a new business in town. It was a free coupon to us, but we connected with many first-time guests because they wanted that free car wash.
And what other one you used to get all the time?
Yeah,
This
so
was real fun.
Chick-fil-A. So Chick-fil-A was right down the street from another campus, and we got to know the owner of the Chick-fil-A, and he was thrilled to give us free lunches.
Yes.
And so we'd give out a free lunch to the entire family
Yep.
that came up, and that was as popular as the car wash, I think.
Yes.
And I always have fun with it. I always say, hey, we got a free gift for you. It's a brand new Toyota. And then everyone laughs and whatever. And then we say what it is. Or I'll go, we got a gift card to Roost Chris for you. And then the other person will interrupt, no, it's Chick-fil-A. And
Yeah.
we'll make fun because Chick-fil-A is not open on Sunday, so you
Right.
can't use it on Sunday. But you have fun with that. So you get them back to this table. And when they come back to the table, you don't want to make it super long. Like, you want to be within their comfort zone. We also have something called Intro to Bayside. We're going to do a whole section on Intro to Bayside, but that runs alongside the guest service table. But you answer some of their questions. You have literature for them. If you have some kind of signups going on, you sign them up for that. But you really try to make that connection, make them feel welcome, give them a gift, make sure they have the information. And by the way, when you get the card, look at the card, just kind of glance. If there's something you want to make him, oh, I see you have 3 kids, or I see you live over in Roseville and I live over there. You know, try to build some identification, but you also see if there's any missing information. And you go, oh, I noticed you didn't put your phone number down. Would you be comfortable sharing that with us?
And I think at the backbone of all of this is really recruiting the right volunteers that have an invite culture mindset. You need to start building a team of volunteers that love to interact with first-time guests, love to help people feel comfortable and welcome. That may start with only 5 volunteers, and you can only do a few of these things at first, and then you build that as you're able to build that team. But that team becomes an incredible community and your best asset in terms of representing the church and making new folks feel comfortable their first time.
Jeremy, you talked about, we called it the guest lounge. So some of our campuses, it's not a table, it's more of a lounge. And inside the lounge, we have snacks, refreshments, and it's a little more of a comfortable setting. Some of them have chairs, and it just, like, you can come in and relax, connect that way too.
Yeah, and Jeremy, you said it's important that you have the right people. It really leads us into the greeters. And greeters, boy, they are an asset to your church. And so getting the right group of greeters, as you said, is super important. And you're going to want to make sure that you get a good cross-section of people. So one of the things that we love to do is go to our high school and college ministries and get a lot of the young people. We'll put the names of Bayside on there and make sure that they're really seen as the greeters. But they add some excitement and some energy. And so we love to get a cross-section of students out there, but also to the other end. We want to make sure that we have some people that are older and everybody in between. We just really want a wide variety of people that are greeters. This is, even though the road warriors are kind of that first handshake, maybe the guest lounge, when people walk up to your church, if they're greeted 2 or 3 times by somebody that gives them a warm welcome, not something phony, but they really are, hey, isn't it a great morning? Glad that you're here. It's not just the same statement repeated over and over again, but they're really that friendly type of people. Then the people coming to your church are going to be thinking, wow, the people are pretty friendly here. And that's super important.
I would add to this, a lot of times too, this is a great entry-level volunteer step for somebody that's brand new. Now again, if they're not outgoing or they don't have that kind of personality, it wouldn't be, but it's really an easy, you show up, 30 minutes beforehand, you meet, you greet. It's not a real hard thing to do, not a really big commitment. And then we do rotations with our greeting. Every campus does a different. What do you guys do?
Yeah, I would just say our volunteers gather 30, sometimes 30 or 45 minutes before the service for a huddle, and that's really where we set vision with the volunteers, remind them why we do what we do. We give them all the important information that they need for the day to answer questions of guests, and then, we deploy them into service. We start with a rotation model of volunteers serving at least once a month, but we encourage them to start with at least twice a month if they can, because that's really for their benefit, that they get to know the other volunteers they're serving with and feel like it's a community for them as well. And then most people, once they start serving, they want to do more, and the majority of our volunteers serve every week.
And one of the things that's absolutely vital for a greeter is that you don't want the greeters to be talking to each other or to people from your church. And this is actually a play out of Rick Warren's playbook at Saddleback. He made sure that one of the rules at their campuses was that all the people that are outside the building, they are there to interact with the guests coming in. They're not there to congregate with each other and make it feel like that private club.
Right.
And so make sure that when you have your greeters out there, that they know you are here for the guests coming in. They greet everybody, but they're not to be just completely socializing with each other.
Right. And after the guests are inside, one of the nice things to do is to provide some kind of hospitality. Just like when you invite people over to your house for a party, you put out snacks or that infamous cheese ball, you put out some refreshments so that they feel comfortable and warm. In the same way, we try to provide some hospitality. So that could be free coffee, just something as simple as bottled water, and then you can go larger.
We have a secret weapon.
What's that?
Bagels, right?
We have bagels. We love bagels. Everybody loves free food. And for some reason, bagels feel like the perfect cross between kind of healthy but not so healthy. It still feels good. So for years at Bayside, we've cut up bagels in quarters and fourths and small pieces with tons of cream cheeses out. And it provides a great opportunity for people to not only feel welcomed, but to also interact with other people as they're getting their bagel, as they're putting their cream cheese. The volunteer can be assisting them. It gives them something to do, especially the first time guest.
So, like, what other kind of foods have been really popular?
Oh, hot dogs are always a big hit. They're free, or they're not free. They're free to the public. They're relatively cheap and they're easy to make. And it provides a great atmosphere for people after service to hang out. They get their kids a hot dog. They can connect to ministries, meet a new friend, and it creates a lot of great community before or after service.
We've done pancakes, slushies, ice cream,
Popcorn, pretzels,
we used to do
cotton
it. Remember
candy.
the candy?
Yes.
We did candy. We had a candy zone.
bar, candy shop,
bar.
where they
Go
could
and get
choose
candy.
something.
Well, we actually did a wedding cake once too.
Yes.
So on the anniversary of our church, we decided let's have a cake, like an anniversary cake, and we our goal was to make the largest cake in the city that we've ever done, and we had enough cake for a couple of thousand people.
And people loved it. They flocked out. Let me say about the bagels too. Like, we have one family that has attended Bayside for a while, and our campuses are kind of in between, where they could go to one campus or the other, and it's about the same distance. And so the father was like going, hey, what campus are we going to land on? And the son said, I want to go to Adventure. They have bagels. And so and again, it's kind of funny in that, but it's actually something that a teenager was interested in coming back to a campus based on having good hospitality.
Right.
And you do a great job with it.
And bagels, hot dogs, these are all relatively inexpensive things that you really can do on a weekend. It's not going to break the bank.
I've seen one church does donut holes. They just put a couple donut holes in a little cup, and people love it. Something so cheap. And sometimes local businesses will work a deal with you if you're doing it on a regular basis. But it makes a big difference in creating community and energy.
Well, our next area are ministries and what we call ministry tables. And we've done this, again, from the very beginning. We weren't the originators of it. Saddleback has done it for years. But we put a few ministry tables outside. So we have one maybe for youth ministry. We'd have one for men's ministry, women's ministry, children's ministry, depending on what are the key ministries in your church. And one thing it does, it creates that we're open look, because people see some energy, some excitement. We play music. If we're going to give out food, we give it out sometimes at those ministry tables, so they have to go to those ministry tables and interact. And it's really been a big part of what we've done. And it's also a way we recruit volunteers. So they're out there. So say I'm at the youth ministry table. I'm looking for brand new students to come in. And I'm going, hey, love to meet you. My name's Joe. I work with the youth. Love to connect you, get involved. So that's one of the things. Second of all, you have your eye out for someone that looks like they would maybe be a cool person to fit in your ministry, and you just start up a conversation and say, hey, would love to see if you'd be interested in stopping by to our youth ministry. We meet on Wednesday nights, and to see maybe you'd be a fit for something you'd like to volunteer and get involved in.
In fact, one of the secret weapons, I call it at Bayside, is that when we first started, we started with 26 people in a tennis club, and literally people that came to the very first meeting, when we had the next meeting, the assistant to our senior pastor, she would call the people that were the first-time visitors in that very first meeting and say, hey, would you greet next meeting at the next church, at the next time that we meet? And so we'd have these ministry tables, and people would say, I don't even go to your church, I just visited that one time. And she'd say, like, well, you had such a nice smile, can you just come back and greet? And we literally recruited volunteer after volunteer by just having them serve at the tables, the ministry tables, as a greeter.
Yeah.
And just said, well, it doesn't matter whether you go to our church or not, you have a nice smile, just greet people and say hi. And so then people would come and go, wow, you go to this church? And they're like, well, I just came last weekend for the first time, but they asked me to greet. And it helped grow the church.
By the way, if I were part of this campus, someone would be in trouble, because you notice the signs? His head's blocking the men's ministry. These are not high enough. And
low.
you know how often I push it all the time with them. And it's so easy to default with these, because they find a sign holder that's only this high. And I'm like, nope, it's got to go up high. What we would do is put these signs on a table. We actually created a thing at one point that was a little vice grip thing that held it up in a lot of different ways, but people tend to go backwards instead of upwards. So if you start with signs up here, someone comes in one week and goes, that's a lot of work, and they start to go down, and they go down, and they go down, until when the sign becomes a paper that's laying flat on the table that no one can read. So you have this is the law of entropy. You have to fight this all the time. You always are constantly fighting about people starting up here and falling backward. People, I always talk about this, like, is it hard to grow things? Well, yes or no?
Yeah.
It's actually not hard to grow things. If I go in my backyard and don't do anything, things are going to grow there. Yeah. It's just the right things won't grow.
Yeah, exactly.
So making the right things grow is hard to do, just like leading any ministry. And so when I get feedback from people saying, well, our church can't do that, we're not Bayside, we're not big enough, it's just, you have to put energy in, because Bayside doesn't work the way we want it to. As you can see here, like, I would be totally going, we can't do this. These signs have to be taller. And you know what? You get pushback and you get pushback. Even from people you pay, you get pushback. And you have to, like, continually hold the standard high, because again, it will the signs will drop, and you'll get to the place where people can't see them, and we lose the purpose of why you do it in the first place.
And another area that's so important for guests is that atmosphere. As they go from the lobby into the worship center, it's so important that it feels lively and energetic. And so one thing we do at Bayside is we don't open our doors to the worship center until like 15, sometimes even 10 minutes before the service starts. And we do that because we don't want people just coming in, sitting down by themselves and just waiting for 20 or 30 minutes before the service starts. But we actually keep the doors of the auditorium closed. It gives our worship team a chance to really get prepared and ready. And then it kind of captures all of those people in the lobby, where they are visiting ministry tables, they're getting hospitality, and they're interacting with our amazing volunteers that are going to prepare them for a great experience. And then when the doors open to the worship center, the music is playing, the screens are prepared, and our worship team is ready to receive them. It's so important to have that high energy intensity throughout their guest experience, that there's no lulls or dead time where they're just sitting around waiting for something to start. And the environment, as well as the music that's playing. We always have music playing in our lobby and in the worship center. We make sure that it's upbeat music, that's lively, that's at a good volume, so that it always feels warm and welcoming when people are in a space.
Yeah, and the first thing that happens when those doors open is they're greeted one more time now by the ushers.
Yes.
And the ushers are giving them their bulletin for the weekend. They are asking if they need help finding a seat. Maybe they're directing them to an area to sit down. But one of the things that we've learned is that, especially for first-time visitors, often, as John, as you said a few minutes ago, often people come in and they want to be incognito. Mm-hmm. They're visiting for the first time and they don't want to have a lot of attention drawn on them. They don't want, they're afraid that if they make eye contact with the usher, that the usher is going to take them right to the very front row and put them front and center. And so we try and do a good job of kind of assessing the people and saying, hey, if you need help, we're here to help you. Glad that you're here. But be it one more time that there's a touch point with the people coming in where they feel welcomed, We're here to help them. We're giving them something that's directing them. And we're also creating, as you said, we're creating an atmosphere right from the time they get out of their car until the time that they sit down. That's why we call this the street to seat.
Yeah, and I would say the ushers have several different responsibilities. And so one of them that's really important for me is I like people sitting closer to the front than to the back. Now, I wouldn't put them in the front row. We've had strategies to fill the front row before. We've given people free food in the front row. If we ever talk about a book and we go, hey, we're selling this book, you sat in the front row, you get one free. And then you really recruit people to sit in the front row too. Like you actually go to some of your regulars and go, it'd really help us if you'd sit up front. Because it's always hard for the visitor. But when your greeters should try to get people as close to the front as they can. So that's really crucial. The other thing that ushers need to do is they are actually help with some of the issues that arise in the service. So you really want to put together something if you have a really loud crying child. We've had disruptions where people stand up and yell something in the service. Doesn't happen very often, but it's happened. Your ushers have to be on top of it. You don't want the pastor that's preaching or the worship team to have to deal with it. You want someone to get out there quickly. They're kind of scanning that type of thing. We have at the beginning of the services, when the preacher gets up to speak, we do message outlines. So we'll say, anybody need a message outline? There'll be a greeter or an usher that will pass those out. We'll say, do you need a pen? An usher will have a pen and we'll pass those out. We give out Bibles. We've done this for many years. If you don't have a Bible, we'll provide one for you. Take it, write your name in it, and we hand out Bibles. So they're also distributing things. They're making sure things don't get out of control, making sure people are seated up front. And sometimes, like a lot of our services, we run out of chairs and space. In many of our services over the years, we know it's not a typical problem, but we've had that happen. And so they're really crucial to make sure everyone gets a seat and they come in and get a space. Now, this leads us to the next thing, is our chair setup. And
it's really a strategy.
It's a strategy. It really is. An empty room is a big problem. And when I consult with a lot of churches, and they have an auditorium for 200 to 300 people, and they have 60, 75 people, it's a big problem. It's really hard to get energy and make people feel comfortable in a large room with a small amount of people. In fact, I encourage churches to do a lot of different things rather than actually meet in their worship center. I'll say, do you have a smaller room you could move in, and when you grow, because when you walk into that empty room, it just sucks the energy out. It's hard to create energy. We have that at Adventure because Adventure has a 3,000 seat auditorium, and it's so easy for our band and our preaching to preach in that room because it has all the amenities, and we have a smaller room, and I have always tried to keep the smaller services in that room. And it doesn't work very well because you're always fighting against that. But I would put it in the smallest room you can. If you think that 50 people are coming, I would set up 30 to 40 chairs, and I would have it in a very small room. And when more people come in, it's like, oh, more people showed up than we thought. And so every week, almost for our entire 25-year history, we've had to set up chairs in every service. So I'm down in Orange County right now. We had 250 people 2 weeks ago, and I said set up 180 chairs. They're like, why would you only set up 180? We know we had 250. Because it does two things. First of all, when they come in, there's only 180 chairs. They're moved forward. They're not all sitting in the back. So they fill those first. Then you start setting them up line by line as people come in. So and there's an energy and excitement. And this actually happened at Bayside one time. We did a bad chair setup on a weekend. We set up too many chairs. And so people came in and there were empty chairs. And I heard someone in the lobby say this. They said, I wonder what's going on, why people have stopped coming to Bayside. And it kind of created this rumor from one person to another, who knows how far it spread. And it wasn't true. We actually had more people that weekend than the week before. It was just bad chair setup.
Yeah. And that also, we do this so often that we're actually taking down chairs between services.
We take them down between services.
Yeah,
Yep.
so if you have 2 services in a row,
Let me add to this too. We do other things. What else do you do? It's not just chairs. You
Yes,
block
we've
off
got
them.
a really large space, and so one of the ways we've done that is we'll cover seats with black drape. We've put in fancy curtains, but at the beginning we just covered them literally with black fabric because they were fixed seats that couldn't be moved or couldn't be taken down and set up, and so we covered them with black fabric. That immediately changes the environment in the room. What used to feel a huge cavernous room feels much more smaller and intimate. Sometimes we'll put food or hospitality inside the worship center to eat up some of that dead space so that it feels welcoming. We'll put extra volunteers. We've got a pipe and drape, or we've got these rolling wood walls, furniture that we can move into the worship center to help fill that space. Anything you can do to help that space feel full and lively just creates such a much better worship experience and a better preaching experience for the pastors, and it's something that our guests want to come back to week after week.
Now, one of the keys that you're going to hear us talk about a lot is once a visitor comes for the very first time, the next step is absolutely crucial. You want people to take the next step. So if somebody comes this weekend, it's their very first visit, you wouldn't want them to just come and then walk out without something happening.
Right.
And that next step, it could be something fairly simple, but John, what have we done in terms of next steps?
Well, one of the big things we do is we call Intro to Bayside, and again, we'll talk about this, and we need to really go into a lot of detail of it, but basically we'll get up and say, hey, right after the service, we have a 7-minute party for you. And it'll be right over here. We try to have it within the proximity where they can see it in the room itself or right off the room. Go through those doors. It'll be right out there. You're going to get to meet our staff. You're going to get to meet me, the pastor. You're going to get to hear a little bit about our vision. And no matter how boring it is, it's only 7 minutes. Plus, you'll get a snack, and we'll keep your kids in children's ministry. So that's, I think, one of the big things that we do. We've done, in the years past, we do a pastor's dessert. So we'll say, hey, next Sunday night, we're going to all come over to at the pastor's house. We're going to have a dessert. We're going to sit around. You're going to get to meet some of us. You get to talk with some of us. We'll share with the vision.
And we intro that. When we'll wait like 2 or 3 weeks and we'll say, hey, if you're new to Bayside in the last month and you haven't been here very long, please come to this event. And you're going to hear from us what our church is about. And we make it really easy for the person who's fairly new to want to come and hear what this is all about.
And again, that goes back to equipping your volunteer team to always be looking for those first-time guests and that they know what the next step is for a first-time guest, whether that's a table, a ministry, a program that's right after the service. They need to be equipped with the information so they can look out for those first-time guests and direct them to their next step.
So, final thing I'd say here, sometimes it's a midweek event. You invite them to something midweek. We have midweek programming for adults, children, youth, small groups, but try to find a way to get them into a next step.
Yeah. So our final thought is this. People come to your church because they've either come for a felt need or they've just had something that's maybe somebody's invited them. The point is they're going to come to hear the message or for whatever that felt need was. They're going to stay based on the relationships that they build and the community that's created. And if you create a welcoming environment and make it feel like, hey, these feel like people that I can get to know and they're kind of friendly and I like them, doesn't feel too different from their normal friends, there's a good chance they're going to come back. And so our strongest recommendation, be thinking about the street to seat. And if you do even a fraction of one thing in each of these areas that we talked about, we're pretty confident that you're going to create not only a welcoming environment, but an environment where people are going to come back. So over the next month, see how many of these that you can implement, and we're going to look forward to hearing back from you about the success that you've had because of it.